Tesla is making some really smart moves right now, and a lot of people don't really understand what they're doing. And while they're cutting these prices of vehicles, especially in China, and a lot of people are worried about this with Tesla falling down 8% in the pre-market, this could actually be really good for the company. And I don't think a lot of people understand what's happening. Now, I have notes pulled up on the computer next to me. I'm out, obviously, from my normal setup, so I apologize for that. The phone might be a little bit shaky. I might be looking to the side to see the notes, but I think that the news and the data here and the process of our thinking is the most important part. So I apologize for that, but we'll get through. Now, obviously, Tesla has cut prices here recently, causing a lot of people to worry about the demand. A lot of people are just worried about demand with Tesla, and if prices are coming down, they think automatically that there's no demand for Tesla. We saw Tesla fall a lot in the pre-market, now coming up a little bit with the overall market, but I think you have to keep a couple things in mind. First of all, while people think that Tesla's demand isn't high, we can't see demand for other car companies like we can Tesla. A lot of the other electric vehicle companies or companies that make electric vehicles, we have no idea what the demand is for, because first of all, some of them have large backlogs because they can't ramp production, or they're not even close to the level that Tesla's at. For example, Rivian, Lucid, those companies obviously are producing many, many orders of magnitude less vehicles than Tesla, or very many vehicles less than Tesla. Now, the other electric cars that are being produced are from traditional car companies, right? And we still don't know because they are not ramping production either as much as Tesla. For example, GM and Ford, they produce nowhere near the number of electric vehicles. Now, some people look at BYD, and you have to realize that they make many more vehicles than Tesla in China, but their margins are so much lower, which we'll talk about here. However, I would go back to the US vehicles for a second, and even though you can't actually know how high the demand is for those other electric vehicle makers, you can kind of, I would assume you can kind of guess that Tesla would have higher demand than these other vehicle makers for a couple different reasons. First of all, the number one problem that people have with electric vehicles is that they're worried about charging. And Tesla has so many more chargers than these other electric vehicle makers and these other vehicle makers in general, right? You can use something like ChargePoint, but I've heard some horror stories. Sometimes it takes much longer to charge, and also it is a lot of the time you come across these charging stations and they're not even there, like they're not even working. So I would assume that people would go with Tesla just for the ease and the peace of mind that they're actually going to be able to charge when needed. Also, they have way less recalls. We have had a lot of recalls hit news recently, but a lot of them are just over-the-air software updates compared to a lot of other vehicle makers where they actually have to go in person and get their car fixed. Also, they have lower prices than other vehicle makers like GM with their Hummer, which is I think over 6 figures. Also, Lucid, Rivian, those are much more expensive as well compared to Tesla's. Also, Tesla has much higher margins. Right now, their margin is 13.4%, I believe, net. So that is much higher than something like BYD, which is in the 1% to 2% range. So they actually have the ability to lower the price of their vehicles, which is fantastic. I mean, a lot of these other car companies just don't have that flexibility. And when you look at some US makers as well, they're actually negative on their vehicles. They actually make less money by selling their electric vehicles than they bring in. It's crazy that that's the case, but a lot of them just produce electric vehicles just to have that as an additional option. So Tesla continues to sell cars because they're lowering prices. They have better margins, so they have the ability to lower the prices on their vehicles. And other electric vehicle makers either are going to have less demand, they're not going to be able to actually sell the vehicles that they make, or they're going to have negative cash flow on those vehicles because they're going to have to lower the prices. Now, of course, that might not be the case right away because maybe some people have committed to buying these vehicles, but maybe they just lose their deposits. Like if you put a deposit down on some smaller electric vehicle car maker and you put down your deposit months ago, maybe you just lose your deposit and you go with a Tesla, or you just lose your deposit and then if they lower prices, you just go in for the lower price. So they're going to have, these other car companies are going to have to do something to compete with Tesla because Tesla has a superior product at a lower price, right? Now, if they quit, let's say they just don't want to sell cars at a negative cash flow, or they just aren't making enough vehicles in general, or they have the EV sitting around and they just decide that they are going to quit producing these vehicles, or they're just gonna roll back production, because a lot of the car makers have already done that. I think it was Toyota said that they're going to really focus on hybrids recently. They're cutting some of their EV plans. A lot of car makers are just dialing back in general, especially going into recession, because these aren't the money makers for them. If they quit their research or development or selling of these electric vehicles, they're just going to get farther and farther behind compared to Tesla. So a lot of people think that this is a difficult time for Tesla because they're having to cut prices, but the other electric vehicle makers just don't have the ability to cut prices yet. And again, if they do cut prices and they get those negative margins, they're going to be losing more money than they are now. And a lot of these car companies are at a very tough spot anyways. For example, I'm switching hands a little bit here just to show, or just to take a look at our screen here. So this is Tesla's cash balance. Let's see if you can see there, 17.12 billion. This is a great cash position compared to something like General Motors, and hopefully this isn't backwards for you guys, but they are at negative $47 billion in cash. And then Ford, negative 25 billion. We're looking right over here. So they are in a very tough cash position compared to Tesla. They don't have the flexibility in margins. They don't have the flexibility in cash balances to be able to weather a negative cash flow year, a couple of years, especially while rates continue to go up. And the fact is that Tesla is just in so much better of a position. They have the flexibility that these other car companies don't have. So while a lot of people are thinking this is negative for Tesla, the fact is they've done such a good job already that this might put them in an even better position, where they're basically cutting costs and racing to the bottom just to strangle the competition. The other competition has no chance if Tesla sells for cheaper, has a better product, has a better cash position, and has better margins. So Tesla still down on the day as of the time of this recording, but it is looking quite solid, I think, for the long term for Tesla. And remember, they still have a bunch of different catalysts moving forward, and Gary Black just wrote about some of them recently, but this includes a buyback, this includes Cybertruck, this includes Megapacks, and they have a lot of room to grow, I think, from here. This is not even getting into full self-driving or into their bot business or anything like that. Just their vehicles, I think, are in a very good spot. Now, of course, I could be wrong. We could continue to fall down, and that seems to be the trend recently, but I am continuing to be a buyer because Tesla seems like such a good deal, and I realize I say that consistently, but over the long term, I think that's going to be proven to be the case. Now, of course, do your own research. Let me know your opinions on these Tesla price cuts underneath the video. There are links to moomoo as well. If you want some free stocks, you can sign up with the link underneath the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.